All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about something pretty massive.
Yeah.
It's the Great Wall of China. We've got some great excerpts here, focusing on everything from, the history to the construction, and even some of those crazy stories about seeing it from space.
I love those stories.
Me too.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to jump into all this stuff.
Yeah, this will be fun.
It's going to be great. I think when most people think about the Great Wall of China, they just think of it as like this one big, long wall. It's just one continuous thing.
Right. That's kind of the classic image, right?
Yeah. Is that accurate?
Not exactly. I mean, it's way more interesting than that, actually.
Yep.
It's not just like one single wall. It's more like centuries worth of construction.
Wow.
And rebuilding and, different dynasties coming in and adding their own, pieces and sections to it.
So like it wasn't just one project?
No. It was this constantly evolving thing,
Wow. Okay. So it's a lot more complex than
Yeah.
just that one image that we always see.
Definitely much more complex.
So, we're talking about more than just keeping invaders out then, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. It's a massive border.
Right.
You can control the flow of people and goods. So the wall also played a huge role in things like border control,
Makes sense.
regulating trade, even transportation.
Okay. So like this wall had a lot of purposes.
Oh, yeah, tons of purposes.
Wow, this is fascinating. So when did this whole wall building thing even begin? I mean, how far back are we talking?
Pretty far back. The earliest walls that we have record of actually date back to the 7th century BC.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're talking about like ancient China,
Yeah.
Various states building their own kind of patchwork defenses.
Wow, 7th century BC. That's a lot older than I thought.
It's pretty amazing.
So, okay, but I still have that image in my head of this like single continuous wall.
Right.
Where did that idea come from?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the Qin dynasty and their first emperor. He was really focused on unifying China.
Okay. Yeah.
And part of his vision was actually connecting a lot of these pre-existing walls into this kind of for the first time.
Oh, so he gets the credit for that.
In a way, yeah. I mean, a lot of those Qin dynasty walls have actually disappeared over time.
Oh, really?
They were built mostly from rammed earth.
Yeah.
Which is pretty vulnerable to the elements.
Right.
So what we think of today, like the classic Great Wall images, that's really from the Ming Dynasty, like centuries later.
Okay, so the Qin dynasty started it, but a lot of it's gone, and then the Ming dynasty came in later.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, okay. So let's talk names. In English, we just say, the Great Wall of China.
Right.
Has it always been called that, even in Chinese?
Not at all. I mean, the walls had a ton of different names over the centuries.
Oh, interesting.
And you can actually kind of track how China's relationship with the wall has changed just through the names that they use.
Oh, that's cool. Tell me more about that.
Well, one of the most common names is the 10,000-mile long wall. But, that's not a literal measurement. It's more figurative.
Right. It's just saying it's really long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about the immensity of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
So were there any other names that they used?
Yeah, a lot of the dynasties after the Qin, they actually kind of avoided using the term long wall.
Why is that?
I think maybe because it was so closely tied to the first emperor,
Right.
Who was kind of a ruthless character.
Okay, yeah.
So they kind of shied away from that term, and they used words like frontier or barrier, or even some more poetic names like the purple frontier
Okay.
or the earth dragon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can see like different attitudes toward the wall reflected in the names.
The Earth Dragon. That's my new favorite.
It's a good one.
It's awesome. So when did long wall become like the main term?
That really didn't come about until the Qing dynasty, which was much later,
Okay.
And that's kind of how we use the Great Wall today in English.
Okay, so it's like a modern term almost.
Yeah, relatively modern. Yeah.
Wow. This is making me realize that the story of the Great Wall is just as layered and complex as the wall itself.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just a simple structure. It's this whole tapestry of history and, different dynasties and attitudes.
Each dynasty left its own mark.
For sure.
Wow. Okay, well, this is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. But before we go any further,
Oh, yeah?
I gotta ask about, this whole thing about early European accounts. Did they even know about the Great Wall?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So like early European travelers, like Marco Polo,
Right.
who was in China in like the 13th, 14th centuries, they didn't even mention the Great Wall.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
That's crazy. How do you miss that?
It's a bit of a mystery, honestly.
Yeah.
Maybe the sections they encountered weren't in great shape, or they were just, less impressive than what we think of today.
Maybe.
But it's pretty wild to think about.
It really is. So no early European accounts, at least not from the people that we think of.
Not that we know of. No.
Okay, well, were there any accounts from outside of China that did mention it?
Well, there's this fascinating account from Ibn Battuta, who was a 14th century traveler from North Africa.
Okay.
And he had heard about the wall, possibly through legends from the Quran. But even he couldn't find anybody who had actually seen it.
Wow, so this is like shrouded in mystery even back then.
Yeah, it was like this legendary structure that, people had heard about, but they couldn't confirm its existence.
Wow, so when did Europeans finally start documenting their sightings?
It wasn't until Europeans reached Ming China, by sea in the 16th century, that you actually start to see descriptions of the wall appearing in their writing.
Oh, wow. So much later than we think.
Yeah, much later.
That's incredible. Well, somebody had to be the first one to actually see it, though, right?
You're right. The first recorded European to actually enter China through the Great Wall was probably Bento de Gois.
Okay.
Who was a Portuguese Jesuit brother, and this was in 1605.
Okay.
And he actually reached the Jiayu Pass.
Oh, wow.
All the way from India.
That's incredible. So from Marco Polo missing it entirely to a Jesuit brother using it as an entry point to China.
I know. It's amazing, right?
Wow. That's wild. So this is already fascinating. We've busted the single wall myth. We've looked at the names.
Yeah.
We've looked at the European accounts, but I got to ask about size.
Right.
How long is this thing?
Well, even defining what the Great Wall is a little bit tricky.
Right.
It's not just there's trenches, fortifications, individual fortresses. It's this whole network.
Yeah.
But we do have some pretty impressive figures from a 2012 survey by the National Cultural Heritage Administration of China.
Oh.
Are you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
The total length of all the wall sections, the trenches, individual buildings, fortifications, all of that comes to over 21,000 kilometers.
21,000 kilometers.
It's massive.
Wow, that's like walking from New York to L.A. and back and then some.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
And that's from all the different dynasties combined.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the Ming Dynasty, what was their part of it?
So the Ming Great Wall alone is about 8,850 kilometers.
Wow.
And that includes over 6,000 kilometers of actual wall sections, plus all the trenches and natural defensive barriers, like, hills and rivers that they incorporated into the system.
So they really used the natural landscape to their advantage.
Oh, yeah, they were smart about it.
Okay, so 8,850 kilometers just for the Ming Dynasty.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
That's insane. And is it all over China?
Most of it is concentrated in Inner Mongolia and Hebei province.
Okay.
But there are sections all over the place.
Okay, so we've established that this thing is huge.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the actual construction.
Okay.
How did they build this massive structure?
Well, that's where we get into the nitty-gritty of engineering and craftsmanship.
All right.
And the Ming Dynasty really takes center stage here because they moved away from the rammed earth of earlier walls, and they really embraced a new material, which was brick.
Brick. Okay, so they were the first ones to really use brick.
They really went all in on brick, yeah.
Okay, but didn't they use stone too?
Yeah, they did use stone, but mostly for foundations, gateways, areas where they needed extra strength.
Okay.
But yeah, think about it. They're trying to build a wall thousands of miles long.
Right.
Bricks were like the Lego blocks of ancient China.
Okay.
They were faster to produce, faster to lay. They could bear more weight, and they were much more durable than rammed earth.
That makes sense.
So it's all about efficiency.
So brick for efficiency and then stone for strength.
Exactly.
Wow, that's smart. But I have to ask because I've always heard these rumors about what else they used in the wall.
Oh, the myths and legends.
Yeah, weren't there stories about human remains in the mortar?
Yeah, that's a popular one.
Is that true?
No, that's completely false.
Oh, okay, good.
They actually used a pretty ingenious mixture of sticky rice and slaked lime.
Wait, sticky rice?
Yeah.
The stuff you eat?
Yep, that's the one.
How does that even work?
It's surprisingly strong and durable.
Wow, I would not have guessed that.
It's pretty amazing technology. For the time.
That's wild. But, okay, I'm picturing all these workers building the wall, hauling stone, mixing up sticky rice mortar, laying bricks, all under the hot sun or the cold wind.
It's been grueling work.
It's amazing. It's like building the pyramids, but stretched out over a continent.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking.
So sticky rice, I never would have guessed that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get back to the wall's defensive features.
Okay.
We're talking about more than just a wall, right?
Right. You've got battlements lining the top.
Yeah.
To give soldiers a protected firing position.
Okay.
You've got lookout towers, signal towers for communication, even trap gates to ambush enemies.
Wow. So they really thought of everything.
Yeah, they were pretty clever about it.
It makes you wonder how effective it all was. I mean, did it actually work?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll get into next time.
Okay.
Because the Great Wall's effectiveness really varied throughout history.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as like you build it and they won't come. There's a lot more to unpack about how different dynasties used the wall, and not just for defense, but also for power and control.
Okay, well, I'm definitely intrigued, so we'll have to pick this up in the next part.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into the Great Wall of China. Last time we busted that myth about it being a single wall.
Right.
And we explored how its names changed over time, and we even looked at some of those early European accounts, or lack thereof.
Yeah, the mystery of the missing wall.
Exactly, and of course, who could forget about that sticky rice mortar?
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
I know, I'm still thinking about it. But before we, go off on another tangent, I want to talk about how effective the Great Wall actually was.
Okay.
It's easy to picture this impenetrable barrier holding back, hordes of invaders.
Right.
But history's rarely that simple, is it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Great Wall's effectiveness really depended on a lot of factors. Who was in charge, what strategies they were using, what kind of threats they were facing. It's not just a build it and they won't come kind of situation.
So it wasn't just about keeping invaders OUT then. What else was it used for?
Well, you have to think about it. The wall runs along this vast frontier, right?
Yeah.
So for any dynasty that wanted to stay in power, they had to control the flow of people and goods.
Right.
The wall played a huge role in border control, regulating trade, even transportation.
Okay, so more like a multi-purpose border management system than just a defensive wall.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're a merchant on the Silk Road, hauling your goods across thousands of miles.
Yeah.
You get to the wall. It's like this giant checkpoint.
Right.
Controlling what comes in and out and probably taking a cut of the profits, too.
Makes sense.
And they could also monitor immigration and immigration.
Oh, yeah.
Which is super important for, maintaining stability.
So basically a way to exert authority and control over this huge territory.
Exactly. And each dynasty kind of used the wall in different ways.
Okay.
For those purposes. The Ming Dynasty, for example, they were known for their really elaborate wall building.
Right.
But they also used the wall to regulate trade with nomadic groups and manage the movement of their own people.
Wow. So the wall's really a story about people just as much as it is about, bricks and mortar.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. Speaking of the Ming Dynasty, didn't they build a massive wall in a different location than earlier dynasties?
You're thinking of the Liaodong Wall.
Yeah. That's it, the Liaodong Wall.
Yeah, that's a fascinating example of the Ming Dynasty's strategic thinking.
Yeah.
You see, they realized that just sticking to the traditional route of the wall wasn't enough.
Why not?
Well, the Mongols had gained control of the Ordos Desert.
Okay.
So the Ming decided to build a wall along the southern edge of the desert instead.
Wow. So they weren't just blindly following the old blueprints. They were adapting to the geopolitical situation.
Exactly. It was all about being flexible and responding to the threats of the time.
That's really impressive. But hold on, if this Ming wall was so strong, why did the dynasty eventually fall?
That's where we see that even the most impressive fortifications have their limits. The Great Wall couldn't stop the Manchu invasion that led to the Qing dynasty.
So even the mighty Ming wall had its weaknesses.
The Manchus were a very powerful force, and they found ways to exploit those weaknesses.
They figured out a way around it.
Yeah, and they broke through. It's a good reminder that no wall, no matter how strong, is entirely invincible.
Right.
Human ingenuity and determination can often find ways to overcome even the most imposing obstacles.
That's a good point. So what about the Qing dynasty? Did they continue to build and maintain the Great Wall?
That's where we see a real shift in thinking. The Qing dynasty, their control extended beyond the wall.
Right, they conquered the Ming.
Exactly. So they didn't really see it as essential for defense anymore. They actually stopped working on it for that purpose.
So the Great Wall's time as this primary defensive structure was kind of over.
In a sense, yes. But the Qing still used walls for strategic purposes.
Okay.
They built something called the Willow Palisade.
Willow Palisade.
Yeah, it actually followed a similar route to the Ming Dynasty's Liaodong Wall.
Okay.
But it had a different goal. It was to prevent Han Chinese migration into Manchuria.
So instead of keeping invaders out, they were using it to control the movement of people within their own empire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating how the purpose of the wall really evolved over time.
Right, reflecting those changes in, political priorities and all that.
Right. And that kind of brings us to the Great Wall's legacy today. It's this UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a global icon.
Yeah.
But it's facing some serious challenges.
Okay, and we'll talk about those when we come back. All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on this incredible journey exploring the Great Wall of China.
It's been quite a ride.
Yeah, from those early walls to the, iconic Ming Dynasty construction.
Mm-hmm.
We've busted myths, we've uncovered some hidden purposes, and we've even learned about the wonders of sticky rice mortar.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget the sticky rice.
Oh, absolutely not. And of course, we talked about those, changing European perceptions over time.
Right, from completely overlooking it to marveling at its, mythical grandeur.
Yeah, it's amazing how the wall's story has really been, shaped and reshaped over time.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about the wall today. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
It is.
It's a global icon.
For sure.
But I know it's facing some serious challenges.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, so paint a picture for our listeners. What's the current state of the wall?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, The sections near the tourist hubs like Badaling outside Beijing,
right?
Those are in pretty good shape.
Okay.
They've been restored. They attract millions of visitors every year.
That's great. So people can still go and experience those really iconic sections.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a must-see if you ever go to China.
Oh, for sure. But you're saying not all parts of the wall are in such good condition?
Unfortunately, no. A lot of sections, especially the ones in more remote areas, are really crumbling.
Oh, wow.
You've got erosion from wind and sandstorms, damage from construction, even mining operations encroaching on the wall's territory.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and then there's the human element. Theft of bricks, vandalism, all sorts of things.
Wow. It's kind of sad to hear that this, this wonder of the world is being, kind of chipped away at.
Yeah, it's a real challenge to preserve it.
So do we have any idea how much of the wall has been lost already?
Well, that 2012 report estimated that 22% of the Ming Great Wall has already disappeared.
22%?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's being done to protect what's left?
Well, there are a lot of people working very hard to preserve and restore the wall.
Good.
But it's an ongoing battle, against the elements and unfortunately against human negligence, too.
Right.
There was even that controversial case a few years back where a section of the wall was repaired using concrete.
Concrete.
Yeah.
I feel like that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, it sparked a huge debate about, what's the best way to preserve the wall? How do you maintain its historical integrity while also making sure it's structurally sound?
Right.
It's a tough balancing act.
And it sounds like it's not just about the materials, but also about educating people.
Right.
About respecting this irreplaceable piece of history.
Absolutely. I mean, even something that seems small, like taking a brick as a souvenir,
right,
that can add up to significant damage over time.
Yeah, we all have a responsibility to, protect this.
Mm-hmm. Our shared heritage.
Exactly. Speaking of shared heritage, let's finally address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Can you actually see the Great Wall from space?
Ah, the age-old question.
I feel like everyone's heard that, but is it true?
It's not quite as simple as you might think. The first thing is we need to debunk that myth about seeing it from the moon.
Okay.
You absolutely cannot see the Great Wall from the moon.
Really?
No, it's just too narrow. It blends in too much with the surrounding landscape.
So all those claims that it's like the only human-made structure visible from the moon are false?
Totally false.
Wow. Okay, so that's busted. What about low Earth orbit, though? Haven't some astronauts said they saw it?
There have been conflicting reports for sure.
Okay.
Some astronauts like Gene Cernan and Ed Lu Day,
right,
they say they saw it. Others like Yang Liwei, the first Chinese astronaut, said he didn't.
So what's the truth? Can you see it or not?
Well, NASA says that it's theoretically possible to see the wall from low Earth orbit.
Okay.
But only under perfect conditions.
Okay.
And even then, it's really difficult to spot. The wall is no more visible than lots of other human-made objects.
Oh, wow. And it's not that easy to see.
No, not at all. In fact, there was even that case where the European Space Agency released a satellite image claiming to show the wall, and it turned out to be a river.
Oh, wow. So they misidentified it.
Yeah, it just goes to show that, this myth has really taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, it really has. But even if you can't easily see it from space, I mean, that doesn't diminish the wall's significance here on Earth, right?
No, not at all. It's a reminder that some things are really best appreciated from the ground.
Yeah.
Where you can really experience their scale and their complexity.
I like that. So we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From its earliest beginnings to its modern-day challenges, from sticky rice mortar to space-age myths.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts on the Great Wall?
Well, I think the Great Wall is more than just bricks and stone. It's a testament to human ingenuity, to resilience, to the complexities of history. It's a story that's still unfolding, and it's a reminder of how important it is for us to preserve our shared cultural heritage.
I couldn't agree more. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the Great Wall of China.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great having you here. Thanks to all of our listeners for joining us on this incredible journey. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.